This is the Sales Babble Podcast, episode 354, How to Get a Sales Job in 2021, an interview with Greg Salkovich.
Welcome to Sales Babble, the podcast that shares selling secrets for non-sellers. And now your host, Pat Helmers.
Hello, Sales Babblers, and Happy New Year. It's 2021, and I don't know about you, but I can't think of a year that I've looked more forward to coming. Because that last year, that was not easy. So here we are, January. It's a new start. It's a new beginning, and I want to kick off the podcast with a bang because a lot of people have reached out to me and have been struggling with trying to get a new job because the industry that they were in isn't working very well anymore. And some people have reached out to me and said they want to get promoted, and they're never going to get promoted wherever they're at right now. So they would like to get a new position, and it's not easy. That's why I decided to have our guest, a returning guest, Greg Salkovich, come and visit the pod. Greg is a recruiter, and he's worked specifically with sales professionals, and he's got a ton of great advice on how to find an opening that works for you, how to prepare for an interview, and how to close the deal. And on top of that, he actually shares some examples of people and some of the struggles and troubles that they've had last year and what his predictions are for 2021. And here's a spoiler alert. He's actually looking pretty optimistic. So, with no further ado, let's get to it. Welcome, Greg. Are you ready to babble?
I'm ready to babble.
Or I should probably have said, welcome back, Greg. Are you ready to babble?
I'm ready. I'm still ready to babble.
I really appreciate you coming here on the podcast and providing some advice for people who are looking to maybe do a restart in 2021.
Sure.
You're a recruiter, yet you only recruit technology sales reps, right?
So we recruit all types of different reps. I mean, right now we're working with a radon mitigation company, so all across the board. The reason why a lot of our positions are in technology is that that's just who's hiring. So when you look online and you see companies getting $50, $100 million in funding, a lot of times those are software companies. So we're definitely not limited to technology.
We're deep into the pandemic, and maybe there's a light at the end of the tunnel with vaccines and whatnot. How has it affected your business?
Yeah, it's been interesting. That's for sure. So, I mean, we're surprisingly doing well considering, but really what we're noticing is a lot of these companies really want to find somebody who has like exact experience. So they don't want to take a chance on somebody whose experience is close or transferable. They want somebody from a competitor that can hit the ground running. A lot of times they don't really have great onboarding strategies for remote workers. So I would say that's probably the biggest thing that we've seen. And also locations mattering less. So, for example, I have one client who used to say, I just want to hire in Chicago. Now he's saying, well, as long as they're on a close time zone, I'm good with it. Because it doesn't really matter. We're all working remotely right now anyway.
So that's interesting. They want people who are already working for competitors.
Correct. And I think it's a lot of times the smaller company because they just don't have a good remote onboarding strategy. The other thing that we're noticing, Pat, is the business development representatives who are the individuals who typically more junior level candidates who are prospecting and cold calling and setting appointments. We're seeing way less hires of those as well. And again, I think it's all about the onboarding. I mean, it makes it very difficult when you have somebody who doesn't have a lot of experience who's in this type of role. You can't sit and listen to them. You can't give them coaching advice. You can do it remotely. It just makes it more difficult.
I'm not surprised by what you're saying here because actually Brian Basilico and I just had a conversation a couple days ago on this very topic, in that it's one thing when you have a cohesive team that gels because you've spent a lot of time together in the same office. Then all of a sudden, everybody's work from home. But because you have that experience to fall back on, it's not so hard, but to continue those relationships and to get work happening. But people invariably are going to leave. People are going to retire. People are going to move. They want to go someplace else. And you're going to need to bring new people into your business, and you're going to need to somehow inculcate them in your culture. How do you do that in a work from home kind of space?
Yeah, it is. It's really, really tough. I mean, right now, I mean, we do weekly calls. I mean, we do a lot of, Zooms, but that's really the best way to do it. And, during our calls, we're talking about, our football teams and things like that, but we're trying to do our best. But it definitely makes it a lot more difficult. You're completely right. Zoom is everybody's best friend right now.
Yeah, but Zoom doesn't really lend itself to, you easily eavesdropping in on somebody. Let's say you're hiring an SDR, right?
Sure.
And you're trying to eavesdrop on them, as they're making these phone calls, and you can immediately make a change, like, oh, next time do this, or next time do that. And it's not like you could do that on a Zoom, but at the same time, you're also got your other work that you're doing. So it's just so much easier if they're just across the desk from you, or if they're down the hall from you, so they can quick run in. And that's not the case in this space.
No, and I thought you were talking about, talking about the culture of, after you hire somebody. No, you're completely right. No, that's what makes it really difficult. I mean, there's, technologies like Gong that will, evaluate calls, and there's other technologies that can record it. It just makes it a lot harder. I mean, the best thing that I was going to say, if you are using Zoom, or you are speaking to candidates, or BDRs or salespeople, is really role playing. I mean, that's what we're seeing a lot of. It doesn't really take the complete place of listening live to a sales call, but it's kind of the closest we have right now.
And as you said, they just don't have that. Many small companies don't have that, so it's just easier to hire somebody who's already understands that industry that they're selling into.
Exactly. They weren't really ready for it. Some of the bigger companies are, but a lot of the smaller ones aren't.
Interesting. What other skills are employers looking for?
I would say that's probably the biggest one. Is really somebody who has that skill set. I mean, one of the challenges you have with that, Pat, which I'm actually having right now, is I have a client, and exactly as we're discussing right now, I want somebody from a competitor. Well, competitors have non-competes. So now we have to find people who previously worked at a competitor. So that makes it challenging. I mean, other than that, the biggest thing is really, the preparation. I mean, I think that's huge, and being able to go in with guns blazing, understand the company, really showing that you've done your homework, showing that you can hunt, showing that you can, cold call, close new business, have relationships, and so on, and really being able to overcome the objections of the person interviewing you.
I know a guy who's been given like 3 or 4 offers this year,
Oh,
and
good.
they've all been rescinded.
Oh,
So he kind of like won the deal, right, to get hired, and then, well, we're not sure where the business is going, and
it's horrible. I talked to a candidate. I felt so terrible for her. She's really exceptional. And I've known her for a couple of years now. So she wrote me the sweetest email, and thank you, Greg, for all your guidance and help and everything. And I'm so excited to start this job. And she was laid off on the third day. Horrible.
no kidding.
Yeah, I felt terrible for her. And she wrote me an email back, and a few days later, and I was like, oh, great. I can't wait to see how her third day was. And she's like, I got let go. I'm like, oh, yeah, it's really tough out there right now.
That's crazy.
I know. But that's why, I mean, I'll tell you a quick story, but I had a candidate, and to be candid with you, on paper, I don't think his profile was very on target. And I sent him to the interview anyway. And the guy just did so much preparation. And, when he got an objection, right, like, why have you been at, 3 jobs in the last 5 years? He just knew exactly what to say. I swear to you that I think this guy knew more about the company than the CEO. I mean, how he information, I have no idea. But that's what you have to be like. And his reasoning for moving made sense. It wasn't, well, I moved because I got more money. I mean, completely rational. Oh, we got bought out. I moved this time with my wife. She got relocated. So I mean, that's what you have to do. You can't wing it.
Interesting. And the thing is that sales is the lifeblood of a business.
It is, and I think we're going to see a pickup in hiring. I mean, I really do. We're starting to already. I mean, we have a really strong January. I mean, we have a lot of people that we place are starting in January. So I think, with a COVID cure near, I believe that we're going to see that. I mean, we're already starting to, and I think we're going to see more and more and more. I do think that people are going to forget going to offices for a while. I mean, we have no intentions of going back to an office anytime soon. We're working completely fine remotely. I mean, we're just as efficient, obviously arguably more efficient. So that's what I think you're going to see in 2021, and even moving forward is less offices, because that's what we're noticing too. Is that when our clients come to us, they're just less concerned about location. And I'll tell you, Pat, I have a recruiter who's in Cleveland, and I was thinking, like, with everybody remotely, maybe I should start hiring in cities that are a lot less expensive than Chicago, because you can get a lot more bang for your buck in Cleveland than you can in Chicago. You want to recruit in San Francisco, it's like these junior level candidates are making 6-figure base salaries because it's so expensive to live out there. And I'm looking at them and thinking, gosh, if you were even Chicago, which isn't that expensive, which is still an expensive city, these individuals, rather than making $100,000 base salary, might be making 60.
I got a client who just moved out of San Francisco into Las Vegas. Absolutely loves it.
I'm sure.
Money goes so much farther.
I know. I have one guy. I was like laughing. We actually were just in touch yesterday, and he was living in San Francisco, and he makes really good money. Like he makes between $250,000 and $300,000. And he told me he's living in downtown San Francisco in a 1-bedroom apartment with a baby and his wife. So the baby like sleeps in the living room, or sometimes they move her into the bedroom. So he just moved to Philadelphia into this like massive home, and he's like, I cannot believe this house that we have. So that's what I think we're going to see more of. Even I live in the city. I live in River North, so right down in the city. But I've been here 8.5 years, and people are moving out left and right. I mean, they're going to Arizona, they're going to Florida, they're moving to the suburbs because the location's not that important anymore.
So interesting.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
Sometimes people just get tired of where they're at.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a challenge anymore, or they can't get promoted.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of advice do you have for people? What are, for people to maybe take a lateral over to another company with the idea of maybe getting promoted? What kind of advice you got for them?
For somebody that's looking to potentially just, they're bored of their job and maybe looking to make a move.
They're looking to make a move. Maybe they've capped out money wise. Maybe they want more responsibility.
Sure. And by the way, that's happened to me many times in my career, so I can completely relate. So I would say one of the biggest things I see, Pat, is a lot of people, think management's the next big step. And to me, it's not necessarily the next big step. And I think they think, okay, this is great. I don't have to cold call. I don't have to hunt. I don't have this quota. I think management's more stressful than being in sales. I know that, I'm sure that you've done both in your career, and I'm sure
I have.
Yeah, it's my brother-in-law says, he goes, you become a professional babysitter, and there's challenges in management. So I think a lot of people who don't have management experience think that that's the next step up, and then they get there and they're like, this is terrible. I'm dealing with everybody's problems. I'm making a lot less money, and it's a lot more difficult than I thought. So I've been talking to a lot of sales leaders recently that say, well, I want to go back into an individual contributor role. It's easier and I make more money. And I just spoke to a really, really sharp sales leader. And he said to me, he goes, can I vent to you? That's what he calls me. He calls me up. He goes, can I vent to you? I said, sure, of course. He goes, I'm now managing a guy that I used to destroy in sales, and he's making $100,000 more than me. And he's like, it's so frustrating. He goes, I'm so much better than this guy. And I said, well, I know, but that's part of being a manager versus an individual contributor. And I gave him the analogy, if you're a basketball fan, I said, look at the top paid NBA coaches. I said, they're, a top paid NBA coach probably makes about $10 million. I'm like, and then you look at people like Giannis, who just got signed recently, and Steph Curry and people like that, they're making over $40 million. So it's like, that's just part of what it is. So I would give them that advice. If they're looking to make a move, really consider, do you really want to be in management? Usually the next step up is going from a, we talked about this before, Pat, but calling them bigger accounts is typically more money. And if you get bored with a company, I completely recommend looking at other opportunities. I always tell people it's a first date, it's not a marriage. I mean, you can go and you can date. It doesn't mean that you need to go jump to that company. And I encourage them, like, go find out, go learn more, see what else is out there. And you might come back with a realization of, I have a really good gig where I'm at and I shouldn't make a move. But usually when you go, I've made lateral moves. I made decreases. And I mean, I've made switches in careers where I've had to take a major decrease. And sometimes you have to take that step back to take a step forward as well. So I'd also advise your audiences that too.
Going back to what you were saying before, it really makes sense for someone to first look at the competition, maybe reach out to them and see if they have positions open.
Yeah, I think that's a low-hanging fruit. Is go to the competition. I would just advise people to make sure that you don't have a non-compete, because I've had this happen to before, Penn, and it's really sad. Is people have gone to competition. I always ask, if I talk to a candidate, I'll say, do you have a non-compete in place? If not, if you're not sure, like, go look, go find out. But I've talked to candidates before, not that I've placed, but candidates I've worked with that have taken jobs and then the company had to let them go, like, right after, because their previous company came back to them and said, if you have a non-compete for, usually it's a year, and you violated it, and if you continue working here, we're going to sue you. So yeah, just tell them to be very, very careful of that.
Do people really sue? I've often wondered about
some companies, yes. Some companies, yes. Yeah, there's certain ones that I won't mention today, but there's certain ones that are more litigious than other ones. But you also don't want to put a company in that situation. So even if they're not, you don't want them to know that, hey, there's a company that could be coming after you and doing this.
I've often wondered about those. I've never been asked to sign one.
Yeah, I signed one, many years ago, and the company got sold, and my boss, I was there for 4 years. My boss was there for 27 years. And, they said, hey, I'm really sorry, and here's what's going on. And the next day I got a next day envelope that said, hey, reminder from our lawyer, you signed a non-compete. So yeah, they enforced it pretty hard. And I that's actually how I got into recruiting, is I couldn't go back into that industry for 12 months. So I said, I better figure something else out.
Interesting.
Yes, it was a blessing in disguise. It got me to where I am. I wouldn't have probably been doing this if it wasn't for that non-compete. So it all worked out perfectly.
What's the best placement you've made this year? One that you're most proud of?
I think, gosh, that's a tough one. One of the ones I'm most proud of is probably the one I mentioned earlier, and it's why I mentioned it, because I'm proud of it. But this guy, who I just absolutely love, like one of my favorite candidates, and he got let go, and he's super, super sharp. And on a scale of 1 to 10, I'd say his background was a 7 for this position. And when I told him about the job, he's like, oh my gosh, Greg, I am so passionate about this, and here's why. And I submitted his resume, and there was some pushback on it, and I just said, hey, you're gonna have to trust me on this guy. Like, just have an initial 15-minute conversation. I'm giving you my I usually have, like, one ace up my sleeve, and I'm gonna use it this one time, to say, like, hey, here's a guy I'm gonna vouch for. So I talked to the candidate, and I said, hey, this is what happened. I'm like, you're gonna have to knock their socks off, and I'll do whatever I can to help you. And he did. And he just did a phenomenal job of everything. He even did, like, a presentation that he had to do it at the end, and ended up getting the job. And he's doing incredibly well. But the reason why I would say I'm most proud about that, Pat, is it's all about matching people. And this is a resume that you'd see and you'd be like, I'm kind of confused why you sent this to me. But it's all about the people element and just knowing who he is and knowing what he's capable of. And despite the client saying, hey, I'm not sure about this, saying, no, you need to talk to him. You just have to I always have to be careful to do that. You can't pull that card every time. You have to save it for the really special ones.
That's an awesome story.
Yeah, I loved it. And he recently posted something on LinkedIn, and he like tagged me, and he's like, "I'm so grateful to Greg Salkovich." And now that that gave me like the chills. I'm like, I'm gonna start breaking down.
How
It was like
gratifying.
so sweet of him. Yeah, but yeah, just so
Absolutely.
grateful and appreciative. And like when I told him that, he's like, he goes, "I promise you, I will not make you look bad. I'm gonna make you look good." And just the amount of work that he put in, and that he got the job being a major underdog was awesome. But that's what I think a lot of a lot of interviewing is. It's just knowing how to take away those objections from companies and from clients when they say that. And it's why, and we've talked about this before, Patty, it's why connections are so important. Because if that guy would have submitted his resume blindly, they would have hit delete. So I'm not saying, I'm so wonderful, you have to go through me, but just any connection, right? I mean, Pat Helmers has a connection to the company. You go, Pat, would you be able to help me? And your other connections. That is so crucial.
Which is a good segue, because I get people, as you know, reaching out to me all the time. Pat, I'm looking for a job.
I know, and I get those introductions from you, so thank you.
And but I also get this. I also get a statement which I don't know what to do with.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if it's true or if it's a whine and a complaint.
Mm-hmm.
And they go, and this is a kind of a touchy subject, but they're like, I'm too old to get a job, or I'm not a man, or they don't like people my race.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not kidding you. I get this
I believe you. I've gotten
people just
100%.
blurt this stuff out to me. Oh, they're not going to hire me because one of those things. Is that true?
So it's so hard to say, is that true, right? Because nobody's ever going to tell me if hey, we're not hiring them because of their gender or their race. So it's hard for me to know that. Do I think it's true? Yeah, I think in some cases, yes, it's true. But and I have this conversation with my wife. It's so hard to know, because it's just, I'm assuming it's true. When if you send a bunch of candidates who are really strong and they don't get the job, and they're of a certain race or gender, and you go, gosh, why? I don't understand why they didn't hire them, and they don't give you really great feedback on it. Well, it makes me at least question.
That there's some bias in there that nobody wants to say out loud.
Well, exactly right, and you can't really accuse them of it either, because you don't really have hard proof. I mean, I will tell you this, which I was actually really excited and happy to hear, but I've had way more clients, I would say, in the last 6 months have asked me, like, we want minority candidates only, and have really, really pumped me for that. So, I would say over the last 6 months, especially, like, yeah, I'm really happy. And I've always asked them, I said, when you want minority, can you give me more details? I mean, are you talking about, gender? Are you talking about religion? Are you talking about, race? So tell me. And, most of them say, specifically, gender and race. So, in my experience, I'm seeing it slowly get better, but we still have a long way to go, in my opinion.
Interesting.
Yeah, but I've been doing this for almost a decade, and I mean, I'll tell you, up until this, I've heard more of that over the last 6 months than I did in the previous 9.5 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, what advice you got? Let's wrap this up. What advice you got for people?
Sure. And we say, what advice just regarding the job search specifically, Pat?
Yes. If you're, for people who are looking for a new position, want to do the best they can, they want to put their best self forward, what advice do you got for them?
Sure. I have a lot of advice, but I'll try to wrap it up. So, I post a lot on LinkedIn. I mean, it makes me visible, but you have to do it regularly. And it reminds people that you're there and that you have good information to share. So I really like that piece of advice. Second of all, I would say network. I mean, it's just so essential to everything, not only sales, but to getting jobs. And most of the jobs I've gotten have been through my network in the past. And most of the people that I know that get jobs are through the network, because it's so competitive out there right now. So that's really, really essential. And, you have to develop your network over time. You can't say, I don't have a job, so now I'm going to start building relationships. I mean, relationships come over time. And third of all, I would just say, in an interview, like, you have to go get it. Like, you cannot say, hey, I'm going to go, wing it. I'm going to look at the website 10 minutes before an interview. I mean, do everything you can, read whatever you can, go on YouTube, go on Google, look at the funding, have good questions, role play the interview with one of your friends or somebody that you know. Because you have to really show them that you're passionate and that you really, really want the job, not that you're just jumping through hoops.
Yeah. Excellent advice. Excellent
Thank
advice.
you. I was talking to this candidate, and I really, really liked him a lot, and he's out west, and he says he was unemployed, and he was previously working at Oracle, and Oracle is a big company, and salespeople can make really, really good money there. So I told him, I said, hey, I'm sorry, but the interview process is pretty lengthy, and I said, it could be 45, 60 days, and he goes, I'm in no rush. And I said to him after I got to know him, I go, you said you're in no rush. I'm curious. I know you haven't been working for the last 6 months. Like, why are you not in a rush? He goes, well, I'm cleaning gutters. And I thought it was so funny. I'm like, this really sharp, polished Oracle salesperson is cleaning gutters. So I said, okay, are you enjoying that? And he goes, well, I grew up in a small town. I worked on a farm. And he goes, I don't mind getting my hands dirty. And he goes, and I'm making $10,000 to $15,000 a month. And I go, cleaning gutters. And he goes, yes. I go, you're making $10,000 to $15,000 a month? And he goes, yes. He goes, that's why I'm not in a rush. And I said, oh my gosh. I'm like, good for you. I'm like, that's incredible. And he goes, yeah, well, I was actually, while we're on the phone, I don't know if you ever recruit, but he goes, I'd love to find somebody who could kind of take over the business as, as I, look for a software sales position. So, we had that conversation, but I'm like, I love the hustle. I mean, I love that. I mean, I love the hustle of somebody like that. I think it's
Yeah. There's a guy who does a podcast on this called Dirty Jobs or something.
Sure.
And he's of the notion of, when we think of entrepreneurs, we think like Y Combinator and Silicon Valley.
That's right.
Interesting. He says you have a much better opportunity of starting a business, getting off the floor, if you pick a dirty job like cleaning gutters and using tech to optimize it, like, to be able to give quotes quickly and
you nailed it.
And to get people there immediately. Like, someone calls up and says, can you clean my gutters? And they go, I can be there tomorrow morning. Well, really? That quick? And you have processes in place. So that guy's a good example of taking smarts and applying them to. And the thing is, a guy like him, he could keep that business running and get out of it and actually just be the sales guy.
100%. I mean, I don't think he wants to clean gutters the rest of his life, but he's okay doing it for now. I mean,
but he doesn't need to. What their premise is, you only need to clean gutters for 30 to 60 days. Then you start hiring people.
Exactly, and that's what he wants to do. He says, I just need to find good people. But it's so funny you said that, Pat. You hit the nail on the head. So I go, how did you? It's all about the implementation to me. I think the idea. Not that I want to say the idea is not important, but the implementation is much more important. I mean, I worked for a $500 million distribution company, and our joke was, we didn't make anything but money. We didn't manufacture anything, and it was all the implementation. They were awesome at logistics, and they were awesome at warehousing and sourcing product and so on. But so I asked him, I go, well, how are you getting leads? How are you figuring this out? And he goes, I go on HomeAdvisor.com and I bid for the leads. So he was using technology to get the business. And I thought I gave him all the credit in the world. And I love the hustle. I go, you need to tell that story during an interview. I'm like, that says so much about you. It shows that you're willing to do whatever, that you're a fighter, that you're successful, that you picked this business up so quickly. I said, that's an amazing story. So, but what he told me, he said, I said, how did you decide to do that? And I said, and he goes, well, it's not like I have tons of experience cleaning gutters, but he said, I kind of went to the path of least resistance. And he said, I know the types of people. He goes, I've had my gutters cleaned. He goes, I know the types of people that come to the door. And he goes, and in my experience, they come 2 hours late. He goes, many of them are not professional. They don't dress nicely. He said I scheduled, after they showed up to the initial call late, I had them back the next day. I hired them. They canceled. He goes, and I'm just a true professional. So he goes, I go to their door. I dress nicely. I speak well. He said, and that wins the bid. He goes, I almost have 100% bid bid win because, I just stay professional and just show up on time. Minor stuff to me, but in the industry, we don't see a lot of it.
Fascinating.
Yeah, I was really fascinated by the story.
Fascinating. Huh.
Yeah. So when you hustle, so the other thing I was going to tell you, man, I was reading recently, and you see a lot more people starting their own businesses right now, and I see a lot of sales leaders actually going into consulting. So, sometimes it's not the worst time to consider being an entrepreneur either. And that's one of the reasons why I started this business. Is one of my goals in life was to update thousands of resumes, but never to have any of them be mine.
I love it.
Yeah. So yeah, that's but when you're an entrepreneur, you don't have to worry about, like you said, being, am I being discriminated against with age, and am I not hireable or anything else? I mean, you don't even have to voice those concerns, and that's why I wanted, a part of the reason why I wanted to start my own business. And it doesn't guarantee that it's going to be still floating in 40 years from now. I'm optimistic that it will, but I do think that for some people that are not employed right now and they're having a difficult time, it's really easy to set up. I mean, it was very easy to set my business. I mean, you set up an LLC, and I could help your listeners with that. It wasn't didn't take very long, and wasn't very costly.
That's another option.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, good advice. Greg, thank you very much for babbling here in Sales Babble. This has been great having you come back and give us an update during these troubled times, as people say.
They are troubled times, but I think getting better. And I really appreciate you, Pat, and love being on the first time. I appreciate you having me back, and always happy to help you or anybody in your network as well.
It's been an honor.
And the feeling's mutual.
Finding a job is just like any other sale. The only difference is that you're the product. But who knows the product better than you? You know all your weaknesses and you know all your strengths. And if you just go through this whole sales process like you do with any other product, trying to understand what the customer wants, what they're struggling with, things that they're hoping to attain, and if you can see that if you're a good fit for them, that's a great start towards earning that new job. To connect with Greg, you can find links to him in the show notes at www.salesbabble.com. Also, if you've not yet done your 2021 goals, by the way, I have posted my goals so that you can hold me accountable just like I did last year. Again, go to the show notes at salesbabble.com, and it's time for you to start figuring out who you are, what you're about, and what's going to make 2021 an awesome year. If you could do me and other salespeople a favor, if you could give me some love, give some likes to this podcast, it will help share it with other people so we can get the word out. If you have any questions or comments, especially ones about employment, people reach out to me all the time. They want some advice on how to get a job or what direction they might want to go. Really, folks, don't hesitate to reach out to me. I'm really easy to find on LinkedIn, or you can send me a message on the website. At the top right corner, there's a link called Babble Me. If you click that puppy, you can fill that out, and then it will come right to me. Or you can give me a call at 630-768-3134. I'm around all the time. Would love to hear from you. Well, that's all I've got for this week. Next week, Jeff Gitmer, the king of sales, is going to be on the podcast, and he's got a bunch of great advice for salespeople on the power of video and podcasting and ways to leverage social media. Terrific stuff. Can't wait to share it with you. But until then, take care and have a highly successful and a profitable selling day.
Thank you for listening to the Sales Babble podcast. Find us at www.salesbabble.com.
This is a production of Habanero Media.